Hello everyone, it's Dino Mike here, and I've been playing Mario Party and the series since I was a little kid, and I'm 27 now. I own the original Mario Party on the N64, and me and my friends play Mario Party 3 all year round every year. Um, I've been very competitive with the game, and I've enjoyed pretty much every single Mario Party besides maybe what Mario Party did I not play? I think I've actually played all of them, but I probably have played 7 the least. 7, 9, and 10 probably. But I thought I'd give my opinion on the minigame selection for Mario Party Superstars. So just wanted to give a quick introduction, and here we go. As you can see, I have the ratings from S to F. And I think most of my games will be in the good average range, but I'll give my opinion on why I put each in each spot, so you'll see how I feel. I'm a top 100 player in survival in Mario Party Superstars, so I'm pretty good at the game, and therefore I think I have a pretty good opinion, so let's begin. So you can hear right away with my voice that I am sick, but this is the perfect time to do this type of thing. And for my ratings, they're usually online ratings, not computer ratings, because online you're going to be playing good players most of the time, and you're not going to be playing with bot AI. So how the game plays online with a slight bit of input delay in some matches actually counts for me. So you're going to see that in my rating. This is an online rating of the minigames. So to start off, we have Mushroom Mix-Up, which is a fantastic minigame in my opinion. You have the ability to ground pound players. You can strategize where you're going to go next. You can go early, and it speeds up as time goes on. The minigame's not too long. It's not too short. It's very competitive, and it's not, there's not a ton of luck or bad gimmicks with it. I think it's honestly a fantastic minigame, and I'm glad they brought it back. So next we have Castaways, which I guess I'd probably just consider average. I don't think it's a bad minigame. I don't think it's a great minigame. It's one of those coin minigames where once you learn the strategy with it, you can get pretty good at it. But at least it has that going for it. Other than that, there's really not much to it. You're just throwing a line and grabbing treasure chests or money bags or coins. And, I mean, that's really it. It's nothing really too special. Next is Hammer Drop, which I'd probably also just consider an average coin minigame. Um, the one thing I don't like about it is that you get a lot of coins in it, but I mean that's kind of the case just with Mario Party Superstars. Is a lot of the coin games you can get a lot of coins at one time, but it's not necessarily bad, and it's still fun and kind of challenging, competitive, so I would consider it average. Next is Facelift, and it's a lot easier when you have another fantastic game to just explain why. Honestly, it's all skill. It's just moving Bowser's mouth and his nose and eyebrows and eyes and making him, look exactly like the face in the middle. And to me, it's really fun. It's hilarious. It's a perfect Mario Party game. It sums up Mario Party. So our first 1v3 game is Piranha's Pursuit, and I'd consider it poor. I wasn't a big fan of it in the original game, but at least in the original game, I actually felt like there was more balance with it. In this game, I feel like it's really easy, especially online, like I'm doing this ranking for, the solo player to win. Honestly, the solo player online for me has won like 9 times out of 10. Like, it's just, I don't know, the vines make it so much easier, and even if all 3 players know what they're doing, I feel like PD Piranha just doesn't catch up. I feel like what would have made this game maybe A or B tier would have been if, like, it was less predictable what was coming in front of the solo player, but in my opinion, it's just so easy to predict what's going to happen that, like, if you lose at it, you're just terrible, honestly, at the game. So, to me, it's a poor minigame. Next, we have Bobsled Run, which is our first 2v2 game, I believe. I'm going to put this in average. The only thing that saves it from being poor, in my opinion, is that the concept is fun and it's not too long. It's just right on time-wise. But I've played the minigame where we're ahead of the person the whole time and the other team randomly catches up for like no reason. I don't know if there's like a speed boost behind the other team, but the game just seems kind of unpredictable, but it's still fun. It's still a fun minigame, and I've always enjoyed playing it online, so I'll consider it average, even if I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it could have went through some improvements, though, for sure. Maybe a bit of some course adjustment with how it plays, because it's very simple. It's not the most exciting minigame, but I wouldn't consider it bad either. Next is Tug of War, which is honestly the best minigame in Mario Party. Just kidding, it's absolutely awful. I have no idea why the devs thought it would be a good idea to bring a game back that was problematic in the first Mario Party and not even really improve on it. Dumb. Dumb. So next is Handcar Havoc, which honestly I've had very mixed opinions about, but I'm actually going to put it in the good tier. I'm not a fan of mashing minigames, which you will see as we go through this list, unless it's some form of like strategic mashing. But what saves Handcar Havoc, in my opinion, is there's a lot of strategy with using you and your teammate to make sure you're properly like positioning yourself on the turns to not fall off. I can't tell you how many times where I've had an intense close match with the other team where they just fell off because they were trying to go way too fast. I don't know, I feel like it's a mix of skill and strategy, and to me that's what makes a good minigame, so I'm just gonna put it in good. So next is Tipsy Tourney, which I'm going to actually put in good. I feel like what keeps this from being an average minigame is literally just nostalgia. It's a very basic minigame of just making sure you can finish the puzzle, but I don't know, it just, to me, it solidifies once again what Mario Party's about. It's not too long of a minigame, but there's strategy in it. You can jump to change how the shell moves on the board. It's fun. It's just good. So next is Shy Guy Says, which I'm not a fan of Shy Guy Says, but I would still put it in the great tier. Now I have one minigame in every tier, so I guess I have a pretty balanced opinion. But I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm just saying that, like, it's cool to see every tier already filled up. But Shy Guy Says is okay. I don't know how I feel about it. It's definitely one of those nostalgia games again. But I kind of like Simon Says, and it's nice to have at least one minigame like that. So I'll put it in great. So next we have Crazy Cutters, which in my opinion, once again, right up into the fantastic tier. When I'm putting these in, I'm not ranking them like in each tier. They're just a fantastic game. Like, I consider each of these three games fantastic. Crazy Cutters, though, you're just cutting out the picture. Once again, it's one of those big nostalgia games, but it's a quick, fun game. There's strategy in it. You know, you have to be patient, but you're also raced on the clock. It's a fantastic game. It's really fun, and it's definitely really fun online. Next is Bombs Away, which I'm going to put in the great tier. I don't feel like I feel like what keeps it from being a fantastic minigame is that although there is strategy in what you're doing, I thought it would be really cool if you could actually like punch and fight people on the island. I understand that wasn't a part of the original game, but what I thought with Superstars, and they actually did this, is they were going to improve every minigame. Bombs Away just feels eerily too similar to the original, and it's still really fun, and it's definitely competitive, but there's this luck factor to it that, in my opinion, will always keep it from being a fantastic game. Still great, though. Very good. Next is Look Away, which I'm going to just consider average, unfortunately. I hope that doesn't hurt anyone's feelings, but although I think the concept is okay, I feel like this is a game that they could have done without. See, to me, when you call a game Mario Party Superstars, you're bringing in the best of the best minigames, and Look Away would, in my opinion, never really be in anyone's top 100. It's not a bad minigame, but there's just not much to it, and I understand there's some strategy, so that's what keeps it from being poor or terrible, but I don't know, it doesn't do it for me, and sometimes I feel like even though you can be really good, there's a lot of luck with just looking at the last second and catching someone. It's still a fun game online, but I would just consider it average. Alright, so next we have Quicksand Cash, which I would honestly consider, you know what, I'm going to consider this coin game good, because there's a lot of strategy with it, where if you're in the middle and you're good at turning, you can get more coins than the other three. There's a lot of balancing in this coin minigame, and that's what, in my opinion, makes it stand out from a lot of maybe the other coin ones. I mean, there's definitely some decent balancing throughout this game on a lot of minigames, but Coin Cash does it really well. I feel like every time I play it, we never know who's going to end up with more coins. And the person in the middle, it depends on how good they are at spinning and reading what the other three are doing. So I would consider it a good coin minigame. So Sneak and Snore, I'm going to also put in the good tier. I don't think there's much to it, but I think it's a decent concept, and the minigame doesn't take too long. It's basically like red light, green light. feel like Squid Games is inside Mario Party Superstars. But I've never been a huge fan of it, but I can understand the appeal with it, and it's definitely like very competitive online. So I'm gonna put it in the good category. Next is Roll Call, which I would consider the poor man's Goomba spotting, and it's very fitting I put it in the poor tier. I just find that at the end of the minigame, a lot of people just look at what the other players are choosing as their numbers, and I've had a bunch of times where we all win, and to me, it doesn't make the minigame competitive that you can see what other people are choosing, nor is the minigame itself that good, because you can always see what's on the screen, so I think this was a really silly minigame to bring back when you already had Goomba spotting, which is a pretty good minigame. So next is Bowser's Big Blast, and while I admit this is kind of a funny minigame with friends, it's terrible because, listen, I probably would have considered Bowser's Big Blast to be like poor tier if it didn't take way too long to finish. And the fact on top of it that it's just complete RNG, it's complete luck to who wins. This is a minigame they really didn't have to bring back. Next is Cake Factory, which I love Cake Factory, but I'm going to be fair and try not to be biased and just consider it a good minigame. I like the teamwork in 2v2 here, where one person gets the cake and the other person gets the strawberry to put on top, and I find it can be really intense and hectic when it starts speeding up. There's a lot to like about this 2v2 game. I think that what holds it from being great or fantastic is just the fact that it's super simple, but I would still consider it like very, very good, like on the cusp of being great. Alright, so next we have Speed Hockey, which is 2-player Pong, and it is so much fun. I think the only thing that keeps it from being fantastic, in my opinion, is that it goes too fast. And it's funny, you know, normally you wouldn't say that. You like quick Mario Party games, right? But I feel like with this one, I feel like it would have been way more strategic if the shell started off super slow and gave you a little bit of time to react on both sides and, you know, come up with a strategy. The shell shoots off really quickly, and I've gotten own gold on that more than just a few times because you don't know which direction it's going to go, and I feel like it'd be more fun if you had control over that. Still a really great minigame, and I'm glad it's here. Next is Slot Car Derby, which in my opinion is also in great tier. In my opinion, they actually improved it from the original games. It just feels way more fluid, and I feel like I get rewarded when I play really well in it. And I notice that I genuinely win when I play smart and I'm consistent. And I like how there's 3 different maps to go with it as well. And I don't know. This is once again one of those games that defines Mario Party. And I just like how it's a combination of skill and strategy and not too long. You know, you get your 3 laps in and it's fun, and it's honestly it's a great mini game, and it's really close to being fantastic. I think the only thing that stops it is that it's very simple. Next is Mecha Marathon, which I would consider poor tier. It's just simply a mashing minigame, and I feel like although it's whoever's the best at mashing, there's not really any like strategy to it or anything, and it also is kind of it kind of tilts on the side of being a little too long of a minigame as well, so it doesn't really do anything for me. Next is Balloon Burst, which I am actually going to put in the great tier as well. So here we go with the great tier, really putting a lot of stuff into there now. They improved it from the original games, in my opinion. Once again, like Slot Car Derby, it feels a lot smoother, and every time I've played it, I've enjoyed it. I feel like the team that's won is the team that's, you know, pushed L and R a little bit, you know, more precise and had more control over what they were doing. Once again, what keeps this from being fantastic, like Slot Car Derby, in my opinion, is that it's very simple. Other than that, it's a really good minigame, and when you see it come on, you know the better team's gonna win. Next is Tread Carefully, which I don't know if this is going to surprise anybody, but I'm putting it in the poor tier. Honestly, this game had so much potential to be really good, but the problem with it, especially online, is you can get ganged up on early on, and it makes the game basically just an instant loss. If they had made Tread Carefully where you always start, like, I don't know, behind something and the tanks moved a lot faster, I feel like there could be a lot more intense battles. I find myself either losing extremely fast because I get teamed up on, or staying extremely long because I got lucky and other people went for other people and not just me. So I don't know, it doesn't make for a good minigame, but it could have been a fantastic minigame if it was done correctly and if the tanks actually moved at a reasonable speed where you could dodge the bullets. Next is hot rope jump, and I don't know if this is gonna surprise anybody, but I'm gonna consider this game fantastic. What makes it fantastic is that the fire rope speed is always constantly changing, and I like how that it really shows who's good at timing by like the last person standing. I've had some of my most intense online moments with this minigame, and although I do feel like it can go for just a tad bit too long, it really is a good example of how like skill and strategy, they're the most important thing with a minigame, is that like, although this is somewhat simplistic, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. If you only play the first 10 jumps, it looks super simple, but when you get farther and farther into it, it gets faster and more intense and more strategic, and you can mess the other person up if you jump too early. I don't know. It's a fantastic minigame. Next is Bumper Balls, which is pretty much like the most popular Mario Party minigame of all time. It's definitely up there in the top 3. But I'm only going to consider it great. I think it makes for a really fun, really hilarious online minigame, but I find that once you get down to the last 2 people, it's really hard to like eliminate the other person. I don't know if that has to do with like ball speed, but I just find that in like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of the 10 of the times I've played this, that like there's always 2 winners. There's usually not just one, which I'm not a fan of, to be honest. I wish the balls maybe had a way to game. Maybe if they were a little bit faster and a little bit more powerful, this could have been the best minigame. But what keeps it from being fantastic is the speed of the balls and not being able to easily push people off. So next is Honeycomb Havoc, which immediately for me is an F tier minigame. Absolutely terrible. There's really not much strategy with it, and it's more of a circumstance kind of result than it is strategy and skill. It really depends where you get placed and what the person before you decides to do. The minigame also takes way too long to finish. Wasn't a fan of this in whatever original Mario Party it was, whether it was 4, 5, or 6. Didn't belong in this one. Absolutely not. And it would never be in anyone's top 100. Next is Bumper Balloon Cars, which I'm going to put in great again. I have a lot of fun with this one online. I feel like this strategy to deciding who to attack and how to attack, and when you hit someone that they spin a little bit. I've had some crazy results with this one, and I think it's a really good 4-player minigame. I think just it's a little too simple to be considered fantastic, and although there's a lot of skill with it, I feel like there's also a lot of luck because of how weird the car controls are, but I still would consider it a great minigame. Next is Sky Pilots, which once again I'm also going to put in the great tier. I don't know why my great tier is so high this early on, but I think I've actually just run into a lot of really good minigames. This is a really good 2v2 one where it's not too long and it's not too short, and you have to work with your teammate to try to not only dodge obstacles but get speed boosts along the way. And I feel like it's just an improved bobsled run, to be honest. It's just a better version of what bobsled run is. So that's why I'm going to put it in the great tier. So I actually just played Dizzy Dancing for the first time somehow today, even though I've played tons of games. I have no idea how I got so unlucky to not run into this minigame yet, but it is absolutely fantastic, and I don't remember it being this good in the original games. I don't know if I'm completely off with that or something, but man, is it really fun and competitive, and it's even cooler because you can attack the other players while you're trying to jump for the musical notes. So there's a lot of strategy to it. It's not as easy as running and jumping because you're dizzy. Like I said, great concept, lots of strategy, tons of skill. This is a fantastic Mario Party minigame, and I wish more were like it. Next is Arch Arrival, which is going right in the poor tier. Although I have had matches where the solo player does lose, it's a really easy minigame because of how slow the 3 players move. I feel like this could have been a much improved minigame and actually a really like balanced one, but they chose to keep it eerily similar to what I remember, and I didn't like the minigame before, and I certainly don't like it now. Next is Dungeon Dash, which I'm going to put in the average tier. I don't think it's a bad minigame. I also don't think it's great. I think it's fun. It's fun online, having to time your movement with someone else online. But I also think that's kind of flawed because of input delay. So this game goes deeper in its rating because if you remember in the beginning I stated this was going to be an online opinion. I feel like online it can be somewhat problematic, but it's also extremely simple and there's really not much to it. I feel like it's definitely one of the weaker 2v2 mini games, but you know, this is my opinion. It's not a bad mini game when I see it pop up, but certainly not exciting and definitely not exactly the most fun. Next is Rockin' Raceway, which I'm going to just throw into the good tier. I was a huge fan of this game in Mario Party 3, which is obviously, if you couldn't tell from the beginning, my favorite Mario Party. And they did a good job putting it into this game. I just felt like it was always way too simple of a concept. I feel like there could have been more introduced into it to make it even better, but I'd still consider it a good minigame, and it's fun, and it's not too long. I think what keeps it from great is just that it's way too simple, and it would have been cool to see them add something else thrown in there to make it more competitive, but it is what it is. It's just a good minigame. Next is River Raiders, which I'm going to throw right into the average tier. I feel like what could have made this good or even great as a minigame, sorry for stuttering, but what could make it better as a minigame is that maybe if the three players could shake the player in front to either move them left or right. I feel like the first player has way too much control over dominating the coins in this minigame, but that's just from my personal experience. I would still consider it concept-wise, you know, just average. It's not a bad coin minigame. It doesn't go on for too long, but there's also just not much to it. Next is Storm Chasers, which self-admittedly is one of my favorite minigames from Mario Party 3. I would consider it absolutely in the fantastic tier. Everything from the strategy, skill, fun factor, and concept with this minigame was really well done. Growing your piranha plants with the cloud and rain that's coming down, having to watch out for Monty moles that trip you up, and fighting for space with the other players as the cloud moves in different patterns and directions. It's once again a really good example of what a fantastic Mario Party game looks like, where there's just a mix of everything in it, and absolutely a fantastic minigame. Next is Puddle Paddle, which I would honestly put as a good coin minigame. It's going to be really hard for me to put any coin minigame in the great tier because they're coin minigames and there's not much to them. Although I think, like Coin Cash, there's a lot of strategy with this one, with working with your teammate. I think what keeps it from being great is the fact that a lot of the coins and coin bags are completely RNG thrown, and one team can benefit from that from the other by not even moving. But it's still a good coin minigame, and I enjoy it when it pops up. Next we have Title Toss, which if this was in Mario Party 3, this would instantly be poor or terrible. But they did improve this one, and I'm actually going to put it into the average tier. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, that's really not impressive. But they took a game which I always hated seeing, knowing that as the one, you almost had no chance to win. Now I feel like the game's a lot more balanced, where sure, if someone's really good as the 3, they'll probably still win, but if you can really throw them off with a few good jumps, you can win this game as a 1. Like, as a solo, it's actually possible. So for me, the game was definitely become average. Next is Parasol Plummet, which sadly, I'm actually just going to put into the poor tier. This is a really good minigame if you're playing with bad players, because all you have to do is really focus on one side, the left or right of the map, and kind of just hang out there and know when to push A. I feel like this minigame could have really done well with some major changes, but as it stands, it's extremely simple Mary Poppins bullshit, where I feel like as long as you stay on one side and you kind of take over that side over the other players, you're just going to get more coins. Just not a major fan of the minigame. Next is Etch and Catch, which once again you're going to be like, oh, he's a Mario Party 3 stan. Of course he really likes it. But honestly, this is a really, really, really good two-player minigame. I'm going to put it in the great tier. You have to work with someone going clockwise and counterclockwise and catch Toad with your crayons. And I just always like the concept. It's simple, it doesn't take too long, it's fun, and the better team always wins. And I like minigames like that, 2v2 especially. Next is Messy Memory, which I always thought was kind of a poor game. Even back, I think this was also a Mario Party 3 one. I always thought this was a poor game even back then. But especially in 2021, where you can literally take a photo of your screen, look at it, and not even have to memorize what's on the screen. Like, before it was an issue when you could just look at other players' screens and see exactly what, you were missing or forgot. And it's not like they can mess you up because they're trying to win, so it was already a poor minigame, but now in 2021, it's like one of the worst minigames, and it had no business being in this game. Next is TikTok Hop, which in my opinion is the extremely poor man's hot rope jump. This is a duel minigame, but in my opinion, the person on the inside of the big hand always has a massive disadvantage with jumping. It's a lot harder to time the jumps on the inner big hand than the outer. And this is from me watching people play and playing myself. I would say even like 70-80% of the time, the person on the outer end of the big hand always wins. The minigame takes too long. It's not a terrible concept, and there's fun changes that go with the clock, but I feel like it would have been much more fun if you were on two separate clocks. So you're probably not going to ever see me do this again for the rest of the video, but I'm actually going to put TikTok Hop into average. I do like the concept of the little hand changing speeds and directions, and I feel like that alone keeps it from being a poor minigame. Like I said, I think what would make it good and great is if the players were on two different clocks jumping. Just my opinion. Next we have Boulder Ball, which is another Mario Party 3 minigame, but I'm actually only going to put it into the good tier. I feel like the concept is awesome. I think it's really fun, especially as the three trying to spread out and get to the top. But I feel like the movement is a little bit more wonky than it actually was in the original game, somehow. And I feel like the boulder also moves differently, and I feel like the changes didn't make the minigame better. They kind of made them slightly worse. Once again, this is my opinion though. It doesn't change the fact that it's still a good 1v3 strategy minigame. Next is Picking Panic, which is another 2v2 minigame. Also, I believe from Mario Party 3 again. I really enjoyed this one. I would actually absolutely consider it in the great tier. So once again, another great tier minigame. I like how the two players have to work together to get the cherries into the baskets. And the different sizes determine the weight on the throw. Always thought this was a really great minigame. There's just not much more to it than that. So I'm going to leave it in the great tier. Next is Vine With Me, which I'm going to put into Fantastic. So that's the first 1v1 duel game that I have in Fantastic. It was a really fun minigame back in the day, and here it's just as good, if not better, where you have to time your jumps really precisely to get to the end of the forest. I really like the fact that if you time every jump perfectly, you can pretty much do the entire process in one go without stopping at all on the vines. But it's always a really intense 1v1 game, and I've seen people lose it on the last jump. And it's just, oh my god, it's so intense and exciting. And it's a perfect 1v1 Fantastic minigame. Next is Spotlight Swim, which I've never been a fan of, and I'm going to put it into the poor tier. I find that the game is extremely unbalanced for the one player, and you can always see the bubbles in the water super easily. So catching someone in the water is just still way too easy, and I don't think they move fast enough to consider this a competitive minigame. I'm going to leave it in the poor tier. There's just not much to it besides trying to catch the person in the water, and it's genuinely very easy to do so. Next is Ice Rink Risk, which I am going to also put into the great category. What keeps it above good is the fact that there's a lot of strategy, skill, and an interesting concept built in where you're on ice dodging these Koopa shells, and you can jump on other players to try to dodge the shells. What keeps it from being fantastic is I feel like there's not that great amount of control. There never was in the original game or this adaptation. But what keeps it above good is everything I just mentioned. That it's really fun and intense and exciting. There's strategy to it. It keeps getting harder and harder when they add shells, and that makes a pretty great minigame. So I'm gonna leave it in the great tier. Next is hide and sneak, which in my opinion, once again, is just an absolutely terrible minigame. Now, what hurts me is it's so close to being just poor, but the fact that it's almost complete RNG again, and especially when you're playing online, there's really no strategy if you're not able to communicate with other people. I feel like with friends, this is probably an average to poor minigame. But since I'm doing an online list, let me clarify that one more time, online minigame ranking tier list, this is terrible. Because it's just complete RNG, and, you know, no matter really who wins, it's just complete luck. Mario's Puzzle Party once again goes into the great tier again for me here. And I'm going to have to adjust the screen now because we finally made it to where a tier is now much larger than my recording screen. But let's finish this first. Mario's Puzzle Party is a really great minigame, and there's definitely strategy in it. But what keeps it from being fantastic is the fact that you can pretty much spam down to get matches and win the game that way. And sure, there's like more strategy after that to ensure that you win, but you basically, like, the fact that that's a part of it, it does make the minigame go faster, so that helps, but it also takes some of the strategy out. So that's what keeps it from being fantastic. But whenever I see it, I'm very happy because I know my skill in it is very good, and I usually at least finish first or second, so. Next is Chip Shot Challenge, which I don't know if you, the viewer, knows this. This is literally my favorite Mario Party minigame. That's it. It's a fantastic minigame, and the funny part is they made it better in this Mario Party. It's a lot more physics-based this time around. So when you're playing with other players, I've seen some crazy things happen. I've seen people bounce off the pole and bounce out. I've had my ball stuck between the hole and the pole. Like, it's crazy what can happen in this minigame, and it's even crazier that multiple people can win if you're good enough. This is an incredible Mario Party minigame, and I hope the future of Mario Party brings more minigames like this. Chip Shot Challenge is my personal favorite minigame, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic minigame. Next is Cheep Cheep Chase, which is funny because in Mario Party 3, this would absolutely probably be poor or terrible, but I'd actually consider it average in Mario Party Superstars. They really improved this minigame, in my opinion. I feel like the button mashing isn't too overwhelming, and the timing is a little bit easier because you only have to hit down instead of a button, so it's a little bit easier to hold both controllers and play this game. So I give them credit. They did make the game a little bit better, and because of that, I'm going to leave it in the average category. Next is Coconut Conk, and this is going to be controversial, especially because I've talked to people who like this minigame. But for online play, I'm going to consider this minigame poor, and extremely poor at that. Because the solo player, I don't think I've ever seen win online. And I think some of that has to do with the input delay. Because you can get the barrel in between the coconuts. But I think without perfect local type of connections, it's really hard to time things as well. And the coconuts fall extremely fast, so that even if you do kind of time it well, it can still hit like the corner of the barrel. I feel like if they made the barrel faster, this minigame would have been much more intense, much more fun, and much more balanced. But with how it plays now, I'm just going to consider it poor. Next is Bounce and Trounce, which I'm going to put into the great tier. It is extremely close, like the previous one I did in this category, to being fantastic, but I feel like there's just not enough to it to make it fantastic, but I actually feel like this version is better than the original. I don't know if that's the physics, but I've had a lot of fun playing it, and I can tell when I'm the smart, better player and I jump lower, I tend to win more. I do feel like it's definitely not the best balanced game, but not poorly balanced either. And it's definitely hilarious and fun online. So I feel like great is very fitting for the game. And also what keeps it great is that the platforms fall off as time goes on. So unlike other mini games, it's constantly getting harder and harder to stay alive, and that's what keeps it really fun. Next is Motor Rooter, which I'm going to throw into average. It plays a little bit better than the original, but I still am never going to be, unfortunately, a fan of the fact that you can't really tell what's ahead of you. So it almost actually benefits you to be slightly behind the other player so that you can kind of cheat and look at their side to get a little bit of an advantage, just in case you get thrown for a loop and hit the electric, I don't know what you'd call it, electric fence or whatever that's around the tunnels. So just for that fact alone that you can't really see ahead of you, I would say it's an average minigame, but I'm not going to say it's a bad duel minigame either, especially the better player usually wins this one, so gonna call it skill-based, and even not fully skill-based, but there's definitely a lot of skill in it, and it's still fun. Next is Mush Pit, which I've never really been a fan of. I'm also going to put it in the poor tier, which might, once again, this might surprise some people, but I just feel like the fact that you don't know where the mushroom is, and the hitbox seems to be a little strange on it as well. I've just never really been a fan of it. It's definitely a lot of RNG thrown into this one, but, you know, it is what it is. It's not necessarily a terrible minigame, but it's not great either. So you guys are seeing me do this again. I'm actually going to move Mush Pit up to average. I changed my mind. There's definitely a little bit of strategy in it, and if you're quick and fast, you can get to the mushroom before other players. So although it's a very simple concept, I'd consider it an average minigame. Not. Next is Eats a Pizza, which I'm just going to put as a poor minigame, and I'm absolutely definitely not changing this one. Even though I love this one with friends, it's a really simplistic button masher that the concept behind it is neat, but it would have been more fun to just have a different way to go about it or something. I don't know. I'm not a fan of button mashers, and especially ones like this that take a really long time to complete, so I'm going to leave it in the poor tier. Next is Snowball Summit, which I would put in the average tier, and I have to extend the recording software again because I'm pretty sure I stretched it out too far. Yeah, so this tier list is too long now. So I'll fix that, but the reason Snowball Summit is an average is because when you're on the summit, you move too slow, and you become really just an easy walking target for someone to knock you off. If the game had faster movement speed while you're on the summit, I feel like this could be a really intense minigame. But because of the fact that you move so slow, you kind of run into the same problem you run into on Tread Carefully, which I believe I hadn't. Yeah, I ranked that in poor. I'm giving Snowball Summit a little higher because there's more strategy with it, where you can make a bigger snowball to defend yourself. But I still feel like you can get targeted, and it's less about skill and more about a little bit of luck. So that's why I only have it as average. Next is Money Belts on the list, which I am going to put into the fantastic category. And therefore, I pretty much made it the best coin minigame game in the game. I believe the next highest one I had was in good. Yeah, I don't even have any in the great tier, which makes this one so good and way better above the rest, is that no matter how many times I played it, the solo player and the 3-player, they both do well, and in one case, one will do a little bit better than the other, but there's a lot of obstacles for both sides, for both teams of 1 and 3, that make it very balanced. This is one of the most balanced coin minigames in all of Mario Party, and I'm glad it's in this one because it's always fun to see if the solo player is truly good enough to avoid some of the oncoming platforms and get enough coins at the same time. And if they do get hit, they get knocked off, and you get some easy coins in return. So it's just a really fun and competitive coin mini. So Pat's of Peril is the next one I took from here, and I'm going to leave it in the good tier because it's just a good minigame. It's very straightforward. It's exactly what it sounds like. Pat's of Peril has you going on some jagged paths, and basically trying your best not to fall off. It's a very good mini game. It's simple, and you just have to get to the final destination, and there's only two different separate paths. But the time in the mini game is perfect. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's just a good mini game. So next is Goal, which I would just consider an average minigame. Now, this is actually one of my favorite minigames in Mario Party Superstars. But the problem with it is it's a little unbalanced for the solo player. I only think I've seen the solo player win one time throughout my like 10, 12 times of playing it. And the big issue with that is you get way too much time to score the amount of goals you need. I feel like if you needed more goals to score, or the time was a little bit shorter, maybe by like 5 seconds, this would be a much more balanced minigame. But as it stands, I feel like it's really hard to play goalie in it. The concept is great, it's unique, it's fun, it's got some physics in it, but it's still just an average minigame because of the bad balancing issues. Next is Trace Race, which is very similar to the third game I put in the Fantastic tier. But unfortunately, I don't think it's as good. It's very, very close, but it's a little bit longer. And I honestly feel like there's less like rush into finishing it. Crazy Cutters is definitely, I think, a little bit better time-wise. But it's still a very, very great game. And I like how you don't get rewarded for rushing, you get rewarded for being exact. And it's always a very competitive and fun minigame, so I'm going to consider this one definitely great tier. So one thing I quickly did was move off ice hockey and stick and spin in those games because they don't count towards the 100, so I'm not going to put them in the tier list. But next is Booksquirm, which is an immediate fantastic. Probably one of the most loved Mario Party minigames like Bumper Balls, but the difference is this one, it's not just about nostalgia. This game is still absolutely fantastic, and it's nice that this is one of those games where even though you can't punch your opponents, it's almost better that way because it only comes down to skill when the pages start moving faster and faster and you have to try and fit into the shapes. This was one of the best minigames back in the day, and it's arguably still one of the best minigames today. So next is Dungeon Duos, which unfortunately I'm going to put into the average tier. What keeps this from being good, in my opinion, is the beginning of the minigame where you're just constantly smashing A to try to like get the walls down and move on to the platform turning. I feel like this minigame just takes way too long. It's not necessarily a bad one, even though there's a little bit of luck at the end. It's a nice combination of a bunch of minigames, but I honestly feel like they probably could have just left this one out. I think there's better kind of concept mini games in the Mario Party series that do it better than this one does, but I would still consider it an average mini game. I have fun when I play it online, but it's just way too long. I do not enjoy Reverse a Bomb. I'm going to put it into the poor category. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who like the minigame, but I just feel like it's very simple and it's just about smashing the bob-ombs to go back and forth and hit each other. And I just feel like there was better versions of this game available, like where you're trying to basically, attack the other team. I remember one of them in the newer Mario Parties, I don't know if it was 8 or later, where you had like a pie fight. I feel like that minigame would have been like a good replacement for this one, but I'm just not a fan of Reverse a Bomb. It's not fun online either. It's definitely poor. So next is Coney Island, which I would probably just put into the good tier. I really enjoy the minigame. It's definitely fun to play online. I just feel like it's definitely missing a few things that could make it like great or fantastic tier. Catching the ice cream is fun, but like once you're in a spot, you can't be moved, and I feel like that makes the minigame definitely more luck on where you were standing and also the reaction times, I guess, of others. I mean, it's a good minigame. I just wouldn't consider it anything too special, but it's fun to play, for sure. Next is Nightlight Fright, which is not necessarily a bad concept, but I'm going to throw it in the average category anyway, because online with the slight input delay, and also like each chain shot moving differently for each player, I feel like it makes the game a little strange. I don't know, I'm just not really a huge fan of it. Once again, though, not calling it a poor or terrible minigame, just average, run-of-the-mill, nothing special, really. Next is Bill Blasters, which I wasn't always a big fan of, but it's kind of grown on me a bit. I'm going to throw it into the good tier, at least for right now. I definitely feel like there's a lot of skill and strategy in it, and although you can kind of gang up on someone, it's not necessarily easy to hit someone with the bullet bill. So it definitely comes down to like being good with timing and not wasting any shots. So just for that alone, I'm just going to throw it into good and leave it. Next is Squared Away, which unfortunately is also going to go in the poor tier for me. It definitely had potential, but there's way too much time for the 3 players to squash the solo player with their block. I think I've seen a solo player win 1 time out of the tons of times I played this minigame. And when something like that happens, you usually can tell pretty easily that the balancing just wasn't good here. So, not the worst concept in the world, but still a poor mini. Next is Later Skater, which I enjoy a ton. It reminds me of a minigame from Mario Party 3 where you were in a boat, and it was the same type of thing where you go in a circle and try to be finish in first place. Trying to figure out if I should put it in great or good is the tough decision, because there's really nothing special about it. I'm probably just going to throw it in good, because it's super simple. It's just turning left and trying to come in first place. You can't really bump anyone, or you can like run into them, but the bumping's really not that good. And kind of the same problem with that original Mario Party 3 game is there's nothing more to it. So it's just a mini game and just that. The next mini game is Dinger Derby, which I would probably put in the I'm going to throw it in the good tier. Online, it can certainly be a bit of a mess with timing, but overall, the minigame is still really fun, and it's just basically good timing-based hitting in baseball, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it's anything super special, but it's certainly not bad, so we'll leave it in good. So we're really starting to get towards the end here, and of course next is Pushy Penguins, which I'm obviously going to put in the fantastic tier. Pushy Penguins was, I believe, a Mario Party 4 minigame, or 5, one of the two, but it was absolutely one of the best in that game, and it's still the best here. It has a chance for everyone to win if you're skilled enough, and is kind of no BS, where if you can position yourself well around the penguins, you can survive. I've just always had fun playing it. It's a challenging minigame. It's got, you know, as you go on, it gets a little bit harder, and it's always been fun. So to me, it's a fantastic minigame. Next is Leaf Leap, which I'm gonna put into the average category. It doesn't really do anything for me. I like playing it, but it's very simple. It's just kind of jump up, left or straight or right, and that's it. That's the whole game. So to me, it's just average, and really that's it. The next minigame that I picked from here is Tube It or Lose It, and it's going to be added to the fantastic tier. It is clearly the best 1 versus 3 minigame in Mario Party Superstars, and it has you dodging a bigger tube with 3 smaller tubes, and you basically can go faster, slower, and kind of in the middle too to try and dodge the bigger tube. There's a lot of strategy involved, and it's definitely fun to see if you can survive the solo player. The balancing is also really good on this one. Burn Style's pretty run-of-the-mill. I don't think there's anything crazy about it, so I'm also going to throw it into average. I wouldn't call it a poor minigame, but it's basically like a better version of TikTok Hop, I would say. So, I mean, having them in the same tier is fine, I guess. There's nothing really too special about it, though. You're just jumping over basically a giant swinging pendulum thing, and that's it. That's the whole minigame, so. Rocky Road, in my opinion, is easily a S-tier fantastic 2v2 minigame, and arguably one of the best 2v2 minigames in Mario Party Superstars. I really liked it back in 6, I believe it was, and I really still enjoy it now. I like how you both have to work as a team to break boulders by jump kicking or just kicking, and then quickly jumping back in your car and moving on to the next boulder. It doesn't take too long as a minigame, but it's just long enough to really appreciate playing well, and there's pretty much always a tight race as long as you're playing with good players. I've always enjoyed the game. I do agree that it could potentially be even better with some obstacles, but for what it is, it's definitely S tier for me, so that's exactly where I'm going to put it. Mass Meteor, like Vine with Me, in my opinion, is one of the best duel minigames in Mario Party Superstars. In Mass Meteor, if you are really good at positioning yourself and timing your movements around the meteors, you will win the minigame. So everything is pretty much premeditated around skill and strategy to make sure you aren't going too fast and hitting all the meteors and slowing down. I do agree that online input delay can have a little impact on the game, but even still, it's definitely a really good minigame, and I'm glad it's in Mario Party Superstars. Dark and Crispy is certainly another very good Bowser minigame. It sees you dodging Bowser in the dark in this one, but you can clearly see his outline if you look just close enough. While I do agree it probably would have been even more fun if you had a little bit more visibility and Bowser was just a little faster. I like the game's concept. I like that he has multiple types of movement, that he can go sideways, diagonal, and that he spits fire out, and that you can, everyone can win if you're good enough. So to me, that's the perfect type of skill strategy minigame, and I'm going to put that in the great tier. Next is Trapeze Artist, and I was debating putting it in poor, but I'm going to put it in average, because I do think there's some skill and strategy in it, but unfortunately, you don't have that much time, and the Goombas tend to immediately go to one way or the other, and especially the golden Goombas. So what ends up happening most of the time is that one player will immediately drop their cage and win instantly. So I do like the minigame. It's a fun concept. I just don't know if it was done very well. I think there should have been a lot more Goombas in play here. Next is Catapult, which I'm also just going to put in the average tier. There's really not much to it. It's just another coin minigame where you're jumping basically from one trampoline to the other and collecting coins, and that's it. So it's not bad. I wouldn't call it poor, but it's certainly not good. It's just run-of-the-mill minigame there. Next is X-Ray Payday, which is going to extend my poor tier list here, because it's a really easy minigame, and I don't really ever see too many people struggle with it. Everyone usually finishes with a lot of coins, and that's just not good for the board economy when that's the case. But at least it's 20 or under. You never get more coins than that, so it doesn't break the economy. But I certainly think this game could have been left out. It's really easy to predict what's going to happen and what you need to pull out of the box. So my tier list is finally too big to show you the minigames that are coming next. So you'll just have to bear with me on that. Next is Pit Boss, which I'm also going to throw in poor. The minigame itself isn't, I wouldn't say is terrible, but it's just basically a worse version of Ice Rink Risk. I feel like they probably could have chosen something else. I'm just not really a big fan of it. And the fact that you can't jump while dodging the spikes also makes it kind of an irritating minigame, so I'm definitely not a fan of it. So next is What Goes Up, which is just honestly a better version of Leaf Leap. So I'm going to put What Goes Up in the good tier and have Leaf Leap in average. I feel like What Goes Up is missing like a few things here and there, but it's definitely challenging and there's definitely strategy involved. Not really the best online game, but I'll put it in good tier. It's still just a good minigame. Next is Catch You Letter, which has you chasing letters to deliver to the Shy Guy, who's basically just running around in circles. I'm also just going to put this one in the good tier. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the game, but it's very simplistic, and you're basically just waiting for a heart letter to get bonus points to deliver to the Shy Guy. I find that it can be a little difficult, though, to get in contact with him, and there is a little bit luck with how you're positioned. I've had him pretty much run right through me, even though I'd be standing next to him, so I feel like the minigames, it's okay, it's good, it's not average, but I certainly wouldn't put it higher than that. Next is Snow World, which might be one of the most controversial minigames in Mario Party Superstars. I'm going to put it in the good tier. I'm really good at it, and I have a really good strategy to get a high score. I think my high score is like 8,800 and something in it, but I average around 5,000, 6,000, and that usually has me second or first place every single time I play it. I certainly think it could have been done differently, but it's still fun and it takes skill and strategy. So I'm going to leave it in the good tier. So the next game is the Final Countdown, which I'm also going to put in S tier. Fantastic. I'm pretty sure that this is a Mario Party 4 minigame, or 5 or 6. I don't know. One of those three on the GameCube. But it's really fun. You can fight while trying to avoid the lower numbers, and there's a lot of strategy involved with that to try and not fall off the platforms or fall through them. So to me, this is definitely one of the best minigames in the game, and there's really no luck involved. It's just strategy and skill with staying alive. Don't know if this is controversial, but Spin Doctor for me is one of so far the 6 minigames that I consider absolutely terrible in Mario Party Superstars. It is by far the worst duel minigame, and although I win it most of the time, I never feel like I truly deserve it. There's definitely a lot of guessing that goes into it because you can't see the paths ahead of you. I feel like they could have made the game at least somewhat redeemable, and it maybe would have made average for me if you could actually see what all the different spinning platforms are doing. But not being able to see ahead of you leaves a lot of guesswork, and it takes any fun out of the minigame right out. Pogo a Go-Go I would probably put in the good category. While I'm not crazy about it, there's definitely a lot of good balanced gameplay there. I feel like the solo player and the 3 players win every other time. Maybe, you know, there's more of a skill in the 3 players, so they win out a little bit more. But it's definitely fair, and it's hard to stay alive in this when you have to dodge the holes on the spinning platform. So, I don't know. I think it's a good minigame. Monty's Revenge I'd probably also add to my good tier. I think the game has a little bit of luck based on where the moles chase, but I definitely like the concept of having to stick your head above ground, and you can even mess a player up by going over the same hole and putting your head out before theirs. And I don't know, it's a decent concept and it's a good minigame, so I'm going to leave it right there. Next is Pokey Pummel, which I'm also just going to put in the terrible tier. That's my 7th terrible game in Mario Party Superstars. In my opinion, it's just a worse version of Mecha Marathon. There's really nothing to it except for just slamming your A button. And, I mean, it's 2021. We don't need minigames like that anymore. Just my opinion. It wears out the controllers. Next is Winner or Dinner, which I would consider a poor coin minigame. I feel like the whole point of coin minigames is being able to actually get some coins. And this one actually, where others might break the economy, doesn't really do anything. I've had ones finish where the highest person got like 8 coins. And it's like at that point I probably would have just rather played a regular minigame. The piranha plants are really annoying, and they seem to get in the way whenever you're trying to do anything. And honestly, it's just a mess of a minigame with a really long ending for no reason whatsoever. So, in my opinion, it's just a poor coin minigame that they probably could have done without. I had a really hard time deciding where to put Paint Misbehavin', but I'm probably just going to leave it in the good tier. I wouldn't consider it a bad 2v2 minigame. It's pretty simple, though. It's like basically paintball, with you standing on different sides of an arena shooting at Goombas. It's nothing crazy, but it's definitely fun, and although it keeps it simple, it's still a good 2v2 minigame, so I'm going to leave it in the good tier. Next is Goomba Spotting, which is definitely a much better version of the counting game that I mentioned before. I can't even remember the name of it because I absolutely hate it. But even still, I find Goomba Spotting kind of like an unnecessary minigame, so I'm just going to put it in average. It's hard for me to put it higher because there's nothing special about it. You're just counting Goombas that run by. I feel like that's one of those games that is just, you know, once again, there's probably something better they could have chosen over Goomba Spotting. Just letting you know right now, Tackle Takedown is my last S tier minigame in the Fantastic tier. This one, honestly, it came close to being just great because it's kind of short. But it's just really fun and addicting trying to find new ways to dodge the defense and get into the end zone in this minigame. And having 3 boosts as the solo player keeps the gameplay very balanced, where if you are good at the minigame, you will get rewarded. And in my opinion, that's what keeps it in S tier. Next is Manner of Escape, which honestly, I'm not a big fan of. I'm probably going to just put it in the average category. And unfortunately, the reason behind it is there's just a lot of RNG and picking doors. And that's all it is just you keep picking the right door until you get to the bottom. Definitely could have used without it. I mean, it's just really not a very good minigame. So Skewer Scurry, I'm gonna put in the good tier. I feel like it's very balanced between the 1 and 3 players to decide the outcome, where the solo player gets to basically change the direction of the spikes at the last second. The game is fast paced, and I think it's fair for both sides, so I'm just gonna leave it in the good tier. So I'm just gonna do the final 2 minigames together because I am super tired. We just did 98 minigames with my opinions on each. Flash Forward, in my opinion, is my last terrible minigame from Mario Party Superstars. I feel like there's a better version of this minigame in a later Mario Party, but this one is way too fast and way too based on luck. I just don't enjoy it ever, and I find that a lot of the times the person who wins wasn't even involved until the last second. So, to me, that's just a terrible minigame. After that is Rapid River Race, which is the final minigame I have to rate, and I'm going to put it in the good tier, and that'll really cap off the final kind of tier list for me of just where everything belongs. I'm not ranking each tier by best to worst. It's just what I think of the minigame. So as you can see here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 games in Mario Party Superstars that I consider S tier. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games that I considered A tier. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 20. Actually, this might be 21. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 21 games that are good. Then you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21 games that I consider average. Another 14 that I consider poor, and then clearly the 7 at the bottom that are just absolutely terrible. That's actually 8, but these 8 games I just feel like they really should have left out. But overall, as you can see, most of the minigames, I would say everything from S tier to C tier, belonged in this game. Really good choices, honestly, and I hope you guys enjoyed my tier list, and I hope you can give some opinions if you disagree. Feel free to drop a comment. Thank you for watching.